The wheel of the year has turned again. Once more, the Thanksgiving season has arrived. Shall we sing our song of gratitude now? For what shall we give thanks? For this moment, for friends near and far, for family near and far, for our breath, for love and clarity, for strength, for delight, for laughter, and for beauty, for the tables and Zoom screens round which we gather, the food we enjoy with friends near and far, seasoned with love and memory, for the sun and moon and the stars in the sky that we all share, for trees who have seen so much and still stand proud, stretching themselves to the sky, for the bright voices of children, for the wisdom of elders, for actions that bless the world and hard work that makes a difference, for music and art and celebration, for generosity, for compassion, for endurance, for hope. For all of these things we give thanks. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Karen Elliott. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm this morning's worship associate. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to welcome and care for one another better. Whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. Please take a moment now to prepare yourself and your space for our time together today. You might want to grab a candle and a way to light it so that you can join in the chalice lighting at home. Now, whether you are lighting a candle or the inner chalice of your heart, Let us kindle our flames to the words of Katie Gefland. I'll light my own candle. We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us. I now invite you to share in the comments where you are by writing, "I carry the flame in," whatever town or city you are joining us from. And now, please join us in singing our opening song, "We Gather Together." The words will appear on your screen. Thank you. Please join with me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Good morning, everyone. I know you can't see me, but my name is Catherine Boyle. I am the Director of Family Ministry here at UUCB, and my pronouns are she, hers, hers. And this is a very special drawing edition of Time for All Ages. So if you are young or young at heart, get close because today I have a question about a mysterious symbol. Maybe you have seen this before. What is this mysterious symbol? Does anybody know? Maybe if I add some detail, it might help you identify who this individual is. Dun 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 dun. And if you said a hand turkey, ding ding ding, you get a gold, well, in this case, black and white star. Yes, it is a hand turkey because Thanksgiving is coming soon in the United States. Now, I was born in Canada and we have Thanksgiving there as well, though it's a little bit different. Let's talk about some of the differences between the United States and American Thanksgiving. So, like we said, we both draw hand turkeys during Thanksgiving. American Thanksgiving is in November. Canadian Thanksgiving already happened. When did it happen? Well, it happened in October, the second week of October. Why is Canadian Thanksgiving in October as opposed to November? Well, I think Frosty on the screen can help you. It's often too cold in Canada to have Thanksgiving. It's really hard to trek through the snow. So, if you were to go to Thanksgiving either in October or in November in Canada or the United States, you would probably actually have the same similar sorts of things on the menu. So, for example, the star of Thanksgiving, that is the turkey, you will find them in both countries. Uh, and I know some people, they don't necessarily eat turkey on Thanksgiving. They may eat turkey, or if your house was like mine, we didn't even eat anything to do with turkey at all. We ate fish, mainly because my parents liked fish better than turkey. Now, in the United States, the Thanksgiving has a mythology to it. There's the story of the Plymouth Pilgrims coming to the United States and getting very, very cold, very, very hungry. And then when the pilgrims were just about to freeze and starve to death, the indigenous people, the Native Americans, came out of the woods and helped them and gave them a grand meal and warmed them up. And that is supposedly where we get the tradition of Thanksgiving from in the United States. In Canada, it's just a harvest festival because it celebrates that time of the year when all the farm work is done. In both countries, though, even though this tradition of Thanksgiving have different myths and stories behind them, they both involve the same story of a group coming in from the outside and taking over the indigenous people's land and resources. So during this time of year, you may find it hard or feel guilty about being grateful and enjoying your Thanksgiving meal with your family. At this time, though, it's okay to enjoy your meal and to be grateful for your life, for your family, for your friends, for your house, and then for also understand the great pain and the grief that this season inflicts on our Indigenous friends, our Indigenous siblings. Gratitude for your life is wonderful, and saying thank you for it makes it so good for you and for the world, and it gives us strength to do the work that our faith requires us to do. So, as you guys celebrate this time with your family on Zoom, no matter where you guys are in the country, you let us be grateful for what we have and recognize the Indigenous people's land that we stand on. Listen to them tell their stories, share their stories, listen to their voices, and we can all, no matter where we live, Canada or the United States, come together and commit ourselves to building the beloved community here on Earth by dismantling systems of injustice and pain that hurt our Indigenous friends. This Thanksgiving, I hope you enjoy that special time with your family. My dear friends, please be safe and be well.
Our liberal Unitarian Universalist faith draws from multiple wisdom sources and faith traditions. Still, the ground of our faith is our own personal experience of life. We look to the scripture of our lives to help us find meaning. This morning, it's my honor to share a little of my own experience as it relates to today's theme of healing from our histories. The weight of Calvinism has been heavy in my life. My immigrant ancestors were all Calvinists, Puritans on my mother's side, Scots-Irish Covenanters on my father's. And the Calvinist ethos pressed down through the generations right into my family of origin. In many ways, I had a soft childhood, a middle-class family in a liberal area of the Midwest, good education, no addiction or abuse issues, a benign congregational community. Yet, as a little girl, I sensed sometimes a kind of confusing danger in the air. Starting in adolescence, I began to think about my family's ancestry and the impact that our form of Calvinism had on us. It took me years to discern. I can say now that some of the most damaging elements to me as a person were its strictness and lack of tenderness, its judgmentalism, and the priority it gave to the individual over relationship. In adulthood, I also began to comprehend the grave impact Calvinism has had in our country as a whole, how it is at the root of so much harm to so many. The UUA Common Read this fall spurred me to investigate my family tree. I learned some details of how my own ancestors participated in the land theft, genocide, and displacement of Native Americans in both New England and the Ohio Valley. My ancestors' Calvinist beliefs supported the idea that human beings were disposable if they were in the way. I saw a through line from this right to that inchoate feeling of danger I had had as a little girl. The danger of maybe being thrown away. For although no one had taught me this, as a child I had pulled out of the ancestral ether an understanding of God as willing to dispose of anyone who was wrong, who was in the way. So by young adulthood, I needed a change. I wanted more. I wanted less. I wanted other. I became a seeker. All my life since, really, has been about rebalancing myself, restoring where possible what was missing, and dismantling, or at least subduing, what was harmful in that original cultural and religious worldview. I had to discern what was missing in the first place, and then work away at incorporating and subduing. Everything in my life was potentially helpful. What are some of the things I've done? I moved to the Bay Area. That was a good move. I've spent much of my adulthood in therapy. I explored several major faith traditions in depth, with the good fortune of participating in the communities. I lived in India, studied Indian dance, was a hospice worker, volunteered in the schools. Marriage, motherhood, traumatic divorce, physical issues, aging, grief and joy. As Ram Dass said, it's all grist for the mill. Every day the fields of my heart are being plowed. I've learned a lot. I am learning a lot. I'm learning right here in our community important things about being kind, being less judgmental, being in relationship, about interdependence, and the ongoing hard work toward genuine social justice so that no one is disposable. As I evolve, I feel supported by you all, by this beloved community, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
This past Friday marked the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance. a time when we pause to hold in our hearts and minds our compassion and understanding for the challenges that transgender folks in our society and the world must face. We especially remember those who have lost their lives in the past year because of their gender identity. Many faced violence in the United States because of their identity as transgender or their gender presentation in other ways. In the past 12 months, globally, 350 trans and gender diverse people were killed. In the United States alone, in the past year, at least 37 individuals that we know of lost their lives to gender identity-induced violence and hate. Today in our roll call, we hold each of them as blessed and we honor their memory. These are those who have been lost. Dustin Baker, Noelisa Luciano Ruiz, Yampi Mendez Arocho, John Scott DeVore, also known as Scott Lynn Kelly DeVore, Monica Diamond, Lexi, Johanna Metzger, Penelope Diaz Ramirez, Serena Angelique Velazquez Ramos, Leila Pelaez Sanchez, Nina Pop, Hella J. O'Regan, Jane Thompson, Tony McDade, Selena Reyes Hernandez, Dominique Remy Fells, Ria Milton, Brian Egypt Powers, Brayla Stone, Mercy Mack, Shaki Peters, Bree Black, Summer Taylor, Marilyn Caceres, Dior H. Ova, Kiasha D. Hardy, Aja Raquel Roan Spears, Key Sam, La Rayshon Day, Arione Burnett, Mia Green, Michelle Michelin Ramos Vargas, Felicia Harris, Brooklyn Deshuna, Sarah Blackwood, Angel Unique, and Unieski Carey Herrera. On this Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are. We remember those who face violence on a daily basis. We remember those who have lost loved ones, and we hold dear those who worry for their loved ones. May we someday come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult or confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, find strength and community, find hope, and find safety from violence. Amen. Now let us join in singing. We sang it again last week, but how true could it be? Let us join in singing, How Could Anyone? The words will be on screen.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less You are less than a whole. How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than a whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Well, it happened again this past week. A complete stranger wished me a happy holiday. Another wished me a happy Thanksgiving. I bet it's happened to you too, so this is not an unfamiliar experience. I admit that I struggle with this particular statement. It's not that the giver of these well wishes means anything other than well. It's just that the holiday can be so darn complicated, and the ways we might recognize it or not also vary. Can also bring in all of the extra layers in our families. And then add in the pandemic this year with the health and safety practices getting so politicized, the wild spreading of it right now, and the overall pandemic fatigue. Thanksgiving is just a complicated holiday. It is a wacky mix of a bunch of different things. First, the typical American practice of family gatherings and gratitude and overeating and such, paired with the onslaught of rampant consumerism that has crept right into Thanksgiving Day and, of course, well beforehand. Take that paired with the false history of the Pilgrims and the Indians, yes, using that term intentionally, and how they cooperated together and shared this warm and fuzzy feast when nothing could be further from the truth. Thankfully, our kids these days are far more aware of the true history than I was when I was their age. I remember one time for all ages when the kids were asked about our history with regards to the Native Americans, and one of them raised their hand and asked, well, what about the blankets? What about the blankets? A mix of feelings found me not with family early Thanksgiving morning, one year in San Francisco, but instead on a ferry headed to Alcatraz Island. I don't know if any of you have made this particular trip. I hadn't been on the island before, but this one was not the usual tour. Bundled up against the cold, I joined 4,000 other people, both those of indigenous descent as well as allies, for an annual pilgrimage to the island. This pilgrimage commemorated the takeover of Alcatraz in the late 1960s, when Native Americans from tribes across the country acted on a federal law that allowed them to reclaim land that the government had taken from them if it was no longer in use. They managed to hold on to the island for nearly 2 years before being evicted from it. Under a clear open sky, we got off the ferry and wound our way through the prison complex. The sky was clear and sunrise would be coming before too terribly long. The celebration took place in an enormous circle around a bonfire, set under Alcatraz's central tower. There was drumming and dancing, prayers and singing both in English and in a number of indigenous languages, and I was swept away with all of it, calling the O of applause along with everyone else. As the ceremony proceeded through the music and speeches, I wondered, since this was a sunrise ceremony, I wondered what was planned for the moment of the sunrise, the moment when the sun broke the horizon. As the light on the tower changed from gray through varying shades of gold, I waited to find out what that moment would be. And as the light strengthened, the ceremony progressed to its central point, the honoring of warriors and veterans. Not the exuberant songs and dancing that we've been having, but instead a quiet and even more powerful recognition. Through prayer and song and recognition, veterans of the Alcatraz possession and of Wounded Knee, and veterans of other Native American actions were honored and recognized. The central reason for the entire gathering was this. The main reason was to honor these warriors. But there was another main reason as well, to make a statement, which was also made with the possession of Alcatraz in the first place. In the words of one of the speakers, it was to say, we are still here. Despite everything that has been taken and all the promises that have been broken, that they were still there, their culture was still there. It had not been completely taken from them. Because so much has been taken. There have been some 236 or more treaties made between the government of our country and the Native Americans, and not a single one of those 236 treaties has been honored. And then there are the missions, the forced schools, the massacres, the relocations, like the Trail of Tears that my own ancestors faced. Where does this leave us now? Where does it leave us in this bleak field of shattered promises? While acknowledging the reality of these broken promises, of these broken vows, I believe we do have the opportunity to keep it from being bleak. There is a beautiful poem by 13th century Sufi mystic Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi. It reads, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you've broken your vow 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come." We as a people have broken our vows many, many times. But rather than living in a place of despair, Rumi calls us to live in a place of welcome and a place of joy. And this is what I experienced at that sunrise celebration. It was not a time of despair. It was a time of joy and honor, of empowerment and solidarity. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times, still come. This is a time when many are taking a good hard look at our histories and starting to come to terms with them. Sometimes this takes a good bit of work. It is absolutely true that the victors and those in power are the ones who write the history, choosing what they want to focus on and leaving out what they want to leave out. It is really no surprise how often the predominantly presented histories are really quite anemic, seeming to only talk about the good stuff and only presenting different groups of people in certain ways. My first entry into taking a fresh look at histories was the infamous, let's call it, book by James Loewen, titled Lies My Teacher Told Me. And I admit the title is fabulous and reason enough for picking up the book all by itself. Lies My Teacher Told Me. Not only does Loewen do a great job of presenting some stories from U.S. history that haven't been told, but he compares them with the stories that are told and picks apart a whole stack of school history textbooks. I took one of his lessons from this book further when my daughter, in elementary school at the time, got really excited when they were learning about Helen Keller. I was curious because she was in a rather forward-thinking school, so I asked what she had learned about her. I wanted to see where they took it. Disappointingly, it was just the typical story, the one ending at the water pump when Keller taps the word water into her teacher's hand. That is scarcely the beginning of her story, though, as Lowen taught me. Keller went on to become an activist, a speaker, a prominent socialist, and had the direct ears of more than one US president. But that part of her story is never told. Too politically risque in many ways. To help correct my daughter's education, I got her some of the books that Keller wrote herself. My daughter ate them up. Perhaps it shouldn't surprise me too much that she's now interested in politics and government. It is not only being aware of our histories, but it's also what we're going to do with that awareness. There is a significant movement today, societally and also in our faith, to do a better job with our relationship to the full histories of the indigenous peoples of our country and of where we live, and to do a better job with regards to our relationships and connections to the histories of African Americans as well as other people of color. So, this week of the Thanksgiving holiday, some refer to it as the Thanksgiving holiday. This week, let's take a moment to correct a few misconceptions that are present in that standard version of the story. So, first, the Pilgrims weren't relocating for religious freedom. That was more of a byproduct. And that one shows up in Unitarian history too. They were relocating for, get ready for it, no surprise, they were relocating for the opportunity to make money. And that Pilgrims thing, they didn't call themselves Pilgrims either. That name was put onto them later. There's also no evidence that the native peoples were invited to any sort of celebration, either in the English written record or in the Wampanoag oral tradition. And Squanto's role is, well, complicated. Yes, he did help the settlers and teach them how to plant things and teach them how to find things. But let's get to the context. Years before, he had been sold into slavery by the English, sent to Spain, and then as a slave, sent to New England in order to help the settlers. By the way, when he returned, let's talk about those blankets again, he found his entire tribe had been lost to smallpox. And our favorite dishes? Well, let's go back to now that we know they're not pilgrims, there was no turkey, and since there was no butter and no flour, there was definitely no pie. There also were no sweet potatoes in North America at the time, so they sure weren't on any tables either. So that cute picture, you can probably get it in your mind, the one that American kindergartners everywhere have seen as a coloring page recently, with that pilgrim in his iconic hat and the Native American, maybe with a turkey somewhere in the mix? Not really. Now, that doesn't mean we have to ditch our own traditions of gathering and sharing our own traditions of foods and traditions of the holidays, whatever those traditions might be. My sister's family somehow fell into the tradition of having a Peking duck every Thanksgiving. We look forward to it every year. But it does call for being a little more honest and open-eyed about acknowledging the histories that are out there in reality, and make sure that we are practicing our own traditions with some degree of integrity. Now, UUCB is doing some great work in this area. One thing we're doing is working on planting periwinkles around on our grounds. This is in remembrance of the history of slavery in our country and the many slaves who died. Periwinkles were often planted on the graves of the slaves, whether they were marked or not. And we also have a team working on exploring many ways we can honor and recognize the indigenous folks of our area. But not only recognize them, but beginning to make reparations with them and building relationships. We are in conversation with local indigenous groups and are exploring ways that we can incorporate the requested land tax into what we do as a church. Now, one tiny place that we can start, and many other UU congregations are also starting, is acknowledging where we are and who had resided on this land before us. And what this sounds like is acknowledging that we walk on the traditional territories of the Hushen Chochenyo Ohlone, federally recognized as the Muwekma peoples and their ancestors. It is upon their land that we in the Berkeley area reside, and they who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. Those are powerful, but it does take more than words. We need to keep on seeking out ways to know the histories, especially the ones that are not at the forefront of the ways that histories are told. So it takes some digging sometimes. But we also take it further, finding out how those histories stretch into today, listening to the stories that we haven't heard from people who are different from us, from people who are different from the ones that we listen to, even finding out what they need and what we need to heal from those histories. This is what we are called to do. Going back to that day on Alcatraz Island, as the sun rose and bathed the island in its golden light, we honored the warriors, the veterans of Native American struggles for recognition of their humanity and for land that could again be theirs. We honored their struggles in the difficult vocation of being human against all odds. The speaker called on all present, both those of Native American descent as well as allies. She called on us all to find ways to be warriors. Being a warrior, she said, is to stand up for the right thing. Being a warrior is not to ride on that caravan of despair. It is to see the despair and then do something, because it is in that action that one finds the grace that can heal despair. This is what we are called on to do as human beings. To listen to the histories, to listen to the stories, to listen to the histories that are not heard, and to listen to the callings of our hearts and lean in when it matters. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times. Come, yet again come. Who are the warriors in our midst? How can you be a warrior and listen to where you're being called? This holiday season, let's keep in mind the checkered past and broken vows. Let's also find the power within ourselves to find what needs to be changed in our world and to set about taking steps to make it change. May it be so.
As always, UUCB needs your gifts and support as we continue to make ours a vibrant and loving community, inspiring spiritual growth and commitment to social justice and lives of integrity and service. We also hope you will continue to practice generosity, especially with our Good Neighbor organizations. This month, we're sharing half of our offerings with Operation Dignity to support the good work they do in our wider community. Operation Dignity has been on the front lines of fighting homelessness in the East Bay since 1993. Its core mission is to leave no veteran behind. They provide shelter beds, transitional and permanent housing to help veterans and their families escape the crisis of homelessness and regain stability. In partnership with the cities of Oakland and Alameda, they conduct mobile street outreach, and they offer substantial support services to formerly homeless adults and children, helping them maintain their housing over the long term. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. More details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as our offertory begins. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. It's always good to be together in worship and song, even if virtually. Before we shift to coffee hour on Zoom, I'd like to encourage you to explore our website, uucb.org. It's a great way to stay informed about and involved in all the things that are going on in our congregation. Among other things, you can find a link in the News tab to The Week Ahead, our weekly email newsletter, which contains a comprehensive list of upcoming activities and contact information. As we prepare to leave our worship service today, here are two important announcements. First, the final day for the food drive is today, Sunday, until 2 o'clock this afternoon. That means we have 2 more hours. We will be receiving donations and items in the UUCB main parking lot. People can drive up, unload their donation to waiting carts, including cash and checks, and it will be taken to the truck and loaded. There will be no weighing this year. Checks are made out to UUCB with Food Drive in the memo line. And second, the UUCB reopening poll is still open. We have extended the deadline. Please take the poll if you haven't already. We need the community's input on this vital matter regarding in-person worship and reopening the church. The link to the poll is in The Week Ahead. Now let's join in singing a traditional Navajo prayer, Ancient Mother. The words will appear on your screen. Thank you.
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
As we go forward from this sacred time and this sacred space, may you hold on to what you need. Remember, you have love all around you, and connections and support in many places. Go now with courage, with hope, and with blessings. And remember, you're never all alone. Blessed be.